Hey everyone, Clay here. Just wanted to let you know I've got a new comic book out right now from Comixology Originals and Amazon. It's called Hardstyle Juice. It's a professional wrestling murder mystery, so if you're into pro wrestling and comics and all that good stuff, you're going to want to check it out. And it's free to read if you have Amazon Prime. It's a digital-only comic. If you want to check it out, head over to hardstylejuice.com, and that'll direct you right to the page where you can check it out. That's hardstylejuice.com. Thanks, guys. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast, where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 Best Horror Movies of All Time list. My name is Clay. With me, as always, is Amanda. How are you doing, Amanda?
I'm good. I'm here in my docks, and I'm ready to start fucking up your house.
Great. Well, we also have Wes here who can stop you. Well, no, he's halfway across the state. But Wes, how you doing?
Good. Nazi podcasters, fuck off.
Nice.
How are you guys? Ready to discuss this cinematic masterpiece that is The Green Room? Not even The Green Room. It's just called Green Room.
No, I was actually surprised at how much of it actually did take place in the Green Room. I feel like there's two ways that a movie like this can go, where it's like, if they don't get their full budget, most of the movie takes place in the Green Room.
Mm-hmm.
But then if A24 steps in and gives them a couple more $1 million, you can get Outside the Green Room and Patrick Stewart. So that's good.
The Wikipedia entry said that this movie was inspired by the director's desire to make a movie in a green room, which is I don't know if that's true or if that's
Mission
just the
accomplished.
Internet, but he did it. He nailed it.
I respect the dedication to the concept.
Yeah, is that why he's never made another movie? He just retired? No, I don't know what else he's done.
I had fulfilled his dream, and then he was out.
I had never heard of the things he did before this either. So, but apparently, there are like well-regarded ones. The one of the Nazi guys is the lead of his prior movie to this, I guess, which is like
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know any of these other ones. Oh, he did an episode of True Detective. That's fun. Anyway, what are we talking about? We're talking about Green Room. Before we started this yesterday, my girlfriend asked me what we were watching. I said Green Room, and she said, "Oh, that won an Oscar, right?"
Oh.
And I said, "No, that's Green Book."
Oh.
Yeah. Very, very different movie.
Green Room are people too, I guess, is the other thing about it. But yeah, it's not the Viggo Mortensen masterpiece.
No, it is. It does have a lot to do with race, though.
Yeah.
Similarly to Green Book.
Sort of, I guess.
Yeah. One race in particular. Green Room from 2015. It is number 83 on our list. It has a 90% Rotten Tomatoes score, 75% audience score. Wes, had you seen this one before?
No, I hadn't, although I knew about it. And honestly, the biggest shock to me was when you said to do this. I was like, oh, yeah, this movie came out last year, and it's like 8 years old at this point.
Yes.
So it's
I had
been
the
a
same
while.
reaction.
Yeah. What about you, Amanda?
Same. I had not seen it, but I had heard about it, and I had heard good things about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like people who had seen it spoke well of it in terms of the genre.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where I always have like one or two blind spots in my genre movie watching, where it's like I'll go out of my way to see a bunch of new stuff that's come out, and then there's just a couple that just fall through the cracks, and I'm like, I'll get around to that eventually.
Yeah.
And I just never do. And Green Room is that movie for me.
Is this one of the rarities that, I mean, Wes has also not seen it, but on this feed, like most of the time you've seen a movie or I have.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we've ever encountered one where neither one of us has seen it before.
I was thinking about that because you did bring it up. Technically, it has happened recently, but you weren't here.
Okay,
because
fair.
One cut of the dead.
One Cut of the Dead was I hadn't seen that. So
got it. All right.
but this might be, well, no, I guess the three of us hadn't seen it. I was going to say this might be a Triple Crown for not seeing it before, but I guess that was also One Cut of the Dead. Yeah, I think we're going to play the trailer for you, go smash some bottles, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Gentlemen, I hope you appreciate the situation. Things have gone south. No doubt. Now, whatever you saw or did is no longer my concern. But let's be clear. It won't end well.
You're coming.
Okay, Green Room, written and directed by, I can never decide when it's the same person if I want to say written and directed or just do the credits separately. And then when it came time to do it, I still hadn't decided.
Yes,
so
you tried to do both.
Yeah. Written and directed by Jeremy Saulnier, starring Anton Yelchin, the most English name in the world, Imogen Poots, Maeve Bluth, Eric Edelstein, and Captain Picard himself, Patrick Stewart. Amanda, what happens in Green Room?
A punk rock band becomes trapped in a secluded venue after finding a scene of violence. For what they saw, the band themselves become targets of violence from a gang of white power skinheads who want to eliminate all evidence of the crime.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, gotta love a nice succinct summary. Well, Clay and Wes, some things you'll find in Green Room include a really poor choice of opening song.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate their commitment to being punk.
Yeah,
Nothing more
rock
punk
spirit.
rock than starting off with that song.
Yeah, I do think it is a terrible idea, but I do
Yes.
appreciate the effort.
Yes. Convoluted pep talks.
Yep. You know, it's funny because when you said that, I forgot about the paintball thing.
Yes.
I thought you were talking about the back and forth with him and Darcy about the gun,
No.
which seemed very much sort of like in Spaceballs when they're talking about, you know, when will then be now, soon. It had that kind of energy to it.
A literal Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, this is the most literal Chekhov's gun you could possibly have.
Yes, in a couple ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Yeah, if he didn't want to just make a movie about a green room, and he said he wanted to literalize Chekhov's gun, I think he accomplished that even better than making a movie The Green Room.
And last but certainly not least, an unfairly cute attack dog.
That was unfair.
Yes.
That final scene with the attack dog laying down next to its dead owner.
Yes. That's not how you're supposed to make me feel about the Nazi dude's attack dog.
Yes. So, Green Room. This was one where I remembered that when I saw A24 in the opening titles, my thought was, this has to be one of like the earlier A24 movies. And so I did look that up. And of course, I have X'd out of that window now. But it is not as early as I thought that it was.
Not super early. I did the same thing, and I looked at the list. I was like, this was probably one of their first ones, and it's not. They've also shocking how many movies they've done over the course of this that I was not aware that they were at least involved with. I don't know if they produced all of them or had some specific role, but they had a lot of films on the list that I pulled up.
Yeah, it was. I think they put out a lot of stuff before they really became known. I think.
Yeah.
And they had a couple hits. Like I think the first one I can remember is Ex Machina, and that is before this. I think this is like the year or so before this.
Yeah. God, I love that movie.
And so I was wondering if this was their first step into horror. Although I guess we can probably have that conversation too, whether or not this is technically a horror movie. But and it seems like they haven't quite, like now the A24 horror thing is almost kind of like a cliche. Mm-hmm. In this movie, I feel like you can definitely feel the beginnings of that as far as filming style goes.
Yes.
and look and subject matter and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, visually, it's actually a really, like, especially in those early scenes, I think it's really pretty in a weird way. Like those scenes where they're just sort of the band traveling in the van through the countryside, and like when two of them have to ride on the bike to go siphon gas. There's like kind of a bizarrely pastoral vibe to it that's like weirdly peaceful and beautiful before everything that comes later on.
Yeah, everybody kind of, it has that indie movie thing where everybody just kind of stands around and stares off into the distance for a while.
To be fair, they do that when their car is out of gas.
And they do it at the end after everyone's been killed.
Yeah.
They just kind of sit there and stare.
That's just being tired, though.
That's true.
Be fucking exhausted.
So what did you guys think? What did you think? Wes?
Sorry, now I'm just, before I get into what I thought, The Green Room is about the 31st or 32nd movie they had done at this point.
Oh, really? That many?
Wow.
In like, only like 6 or 7 years ago, right? It's
yeah,
not
the first one came out in 2013. So
okay,
over
so
the course of
3
3
years.
years,
Wow.
they made a bunch
Jesus.
of, where they were somehow involved in a bunch of movies. Yeah.
How come nobody knows anything about this company? Usually it's like, oh yeah, there's one person who came from Warner Brothers or something. You know?
Yeah.
Like, remember when that lady Pascal left Sony, and that was a big deal, and she started her own thing. Like this, I feel like A24 just appeared.
The first name that I recognize from their list is Tusk, which is 2014.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
yes.
Yeah, so that's
that
the
one.
first
Yeah,
one.
they're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and then of Most Violent Year was out, which I remember people talking about. Then Ex Machina came out after that, so that's pretty much it. This one,
Big early adopters of Oscar Isaac.
So my thoughts about
Smart
this one
move.
is that this is one of those like really great suspense movies where you're filled with like dread the entire time that the movie's not going to get better, and then it doesn't get any better. So that's kind of that's my take. That's my take about Green Room. I thought that this was this one struck me just as, you know, because A24 has this like thing at this point, like you were talking about, like they have a kind of like idea about what an A24 movie is supposed to be and how it looks and stuff like that. This one felt to me like while the company is trying to figure out what they do and they're starting to get an idea about what they do. I don't know how these movies are made. I assume it's not this way, but they're like they see this one, right? They're like shown the movie before they agree to do whatever they want to do with it. And everyone who is watching it, all the executives and whatever, are either drinking or smoking or somehow under the influence, right? And so they see this movie and they go, this is exactly what an A24 movie is. And I think that there's something really deep going on here. I think that there's something, this is like, you know, this is an Ex Machina level thought brain twister. You know what I mean? Like this is a, what is that recent one, Zone of Indifference or whatever, that great Nazi movie that just came out
Zone
last
of
year.
Interest.
Zone of Interest. They think that there's some, they're a little bit out of it and they're like, I'm sure this movie is about something. But then they wake up the next day after having signed the contract and they go, oh no, it just kind of looked, it tricked us. It tricked us into thinking it was a certain kind of movie and it's not. I thought this one was, I was kind of shocked by how highly praised it is. Both online, the Rotten Tomatoes reviews, and I know they're teasers and trailers, but the teaser for this was like, brace yourself for nonstop bone-crunching tension. And I felt no tension through this movie whatsoever. So maybe it's just me, but it didn't, I didn't think it accomplished what it was trying to set out to do. And I'll get into it, but my final thought is that I have an extremely hard time buying into the premise of this one, which distracted me quite a bit. But then after that, I just never felt the tension that apparently everyone else did. So
The premise that punk music exists?
or that like that you can support a touring band at this day and age, I guess, with the cell phone and everything. No,
or the premise that the opening band at this shit kicker place is getting paid $350.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the part I didn't believe.
or the fact that the Green Room is like for the Rolling Stones at this backwoods. We'll get into it, but like the fact that there is like a music venue on top of an like industrial drug lab that's going on, and also is enough to pay these bands to come out, and the cops don't know about it. Apparently, there's a lot going on that's just kind of very confusing to me.
Amanda?
Yeah, so I will agree with Wes that I didn't feel as much suspense as I thought I was going to going into this movie.
Yeah.
But I did feel a lot of dread. Because they're just... The band is so outgunned. Like, literally and figuratively. They don't have the weapons. They're these sort of, like, skinny, like, college-aged kids. And then there are these just, like, giant meathead white supremacists.
Right, yeah.
And there's so many more of them. And they have weapons. And they're clearly willing to kill people. And they're out in the middle of nowhere. And nobody knows where they are. So it's just, like, most of these people are going to die. And I know it. And so I'm just, like, rather than the suspense of, oh man, are they going to make it out? Like, how are they going to outsmart them or whatever? It's just sort of like, I wonder if any of them are going to live.
Yeah.
Is anybody going to make it out in the end of this?
You might have giant Nazis, but we have a deadbolt. you cannot
A deadbolt
defeat us.
that they eventually kick down very easily.
Yes. Yep.
But you know, I did like some of what this movie was doing. I think it was really well acted.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate, as as Wes pointed out, as convoluted as the setting is, I appreciate the kind of simplicity of the actual plot, which is just sort of like they were way far away from home and they're broke and they're handed this gig that's going to pay them an unrealistic amount of money. And so against their better judgment, they take it because they need the money. They see something they're not supposed to see. And that leads to the confrontation.
Right.
Like, I appreciate that it didn't get more... It very
Well,
easily
but
could have gotten much more convoluted.
There is also these Nazis were going to leave the Nazi Brotherhood, and therefore the other one turns his back on them and comes back.
That stuff gets a little muddy. I don't...
I quite like to not. I'll stop talking after this. But I find like the Darcy. So like, and you had mentioned the acting. I guess that like I don't know if this will stir anything, and then I can be quiet about it. But it's like the Patrick Stewart aspect of this, right, is kind of interesting because timing wise, I'm starting to feel when Patrick Stewart checks out of trying to act really, and it's like it's around this time I think because. To me, this is like everyone praises him and he's very good and very natural, right? But I can sort of tell when he's not really trying very hard. And I got the sense that he wasn't trying in this one because to me, this is a great example of it's kind of similar to like Dark Knight Rises Bane. It's like this is a character in Darcy that I don't think is written particularly well, but a really terrific acting performance can still make it intimidating and like incredible in some way. And he doesn't do that for me. It just feels like Patrick Stewart being kind of angry and talking a lot. And it's not, he doesn't inspire like any fear in me. And I didn't think that he was particularly memorable as this character.
Yeah.
And so that was my disappointment of it because going in, I was like, they're like Patrick Stewart plays this tremendous villain. I'm like, oh, he probably goes like crazy in his last great acting hurrah or something like that. And he really doesn't, in my opinion. He's pretty low key in it, or at least like he doesn't even chew the scenery in a way that I thought an actor on his like last legs might be attempting to do in a genre film like this.
Yeah. I don't know if I want him to really chew the scenery, but I will say I don't think he really gets past the Patrick Stewart of it all. Because like, I mean, as Amanda and I were watching it, we were texting back and forth, and I said, "Is he trying to do an American accent?" Because I couldn't figure it out because he's got that distinctive voice, and he is underselling it a little bit. But I don't think he does enough to make me not feel like I'm watching Patrick Stewart trying to play a bad guy, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's not as transformative of a role that doesn't stick out to me. And I would agree that I didn't find him particularly menacing.
No, I also just think that having thought about it, I'm actually not sure if Patrick Stewart is all that transformative of an actor in the terms of like he can play anybody. Really, I don't think he can.
Yeah.
I think he's kind of stuck like this, and if you find a role that works for him, he's excellent at it. He's always going to do a good job, But if you get a role that suits the way that he speaks and the way that he looks, he does an excellent job in it.
Like Brian Cox would have crushed this.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
that's
like,
a good point.
He's the kind of guy who can really kind of, as much as he is recognizable, he can kind of chameleon himself when he needs to. And I just don't think Patrick Stewart has ever really, once he became capital P, capital S Patrick Stewart, I don't think he has ever really managed to do that, which may go into why his filmography is so weird, which I did want to talk about a little bit.
I also think that there's a little bit of a trap here for him, and maybe kind of all the actors in this movie, where this is a very grounded in reality movie. Like, maybe we're saying some of the premise or some of these things are highly unlikely, but they're not impossible, right? Like, there's no supernatural elements in this. There's no kind of insane Deus Ex Machina moment where it's like, wait a minute, what? Like a lightning bolt hit the building and that killed all the Nazis. You know, like you're not. So there's all these very like kind of low key natural performances, like people trying to feel like a real version of what, you know, like, all right, you're a skinhead punk, like, you're not going to have a giant swastika tattooed on your forehead. You still have to, like, go home to your family and go out to work.
Save it for your ass.
Right. Right. Somewhere private. But so I think it means that there's less opportunity for any sort of, like, over-the-top scene-chewing moment, because these are supposed to just be these guys who are, like, especially the skinheads, are just, like, very militant and very, like, you know, not going to take any shit, and kind of... they're running a business too out of this place.
Yeah.
So
somehow, yeah.
I don't know. So it's tough because I feel like if Patrick Stewart or any other one actor in this had on their own gone over the top, I think it would have felt really like, are you in the same movie as the other people that you're acting alongside? And that might have been just as jarring as him kind of being like super cash about everything.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how I felt about a lot of the other performances, specifically from the band, because I think because they did have so much of that mid 2000s indie style where they're every line they just kind of say very flatly. They stabbed her in the face. She was my best friend. I'm sorry. That's really sad for you. Like it was a lot of that.
Yeah.
And stylistically, I don't know if I love that.
It's I kind of wanted to ask you guys about this and talk about this a little bit. I feel like the characters in this movie are not from the time period that this movie happens in.
Okay.
Like Wes mentioned earlier, that one of the unbelievable things about this film is that like a small band like this could support themselves out touring.
Yeah. It feels like an 80s movie almost.
Yeah, a little bit, but like there is, especially in like punk and hardcore scenes, there is sort of like, I don't know, like loosely connected groups and people who will sort of come out and support you and let you crash for free at their house.
Yeah, they have like an Underground Railroad type situation.
Yeah,
it's
sort of.
Like,
I had a friend in college who in the summers he and his older brother were in a band, and they would just get in a shitty van and they would drive like up and down the Eastern Seaboard and like do shows.
Yep.
And they were not making money off of it. Like, you know, they made enough to sort of like keep the van running, and when their gear got stolen, replace some of it, like things like that. So that kind of thing does happen, but what I'm talking about is in 2008.
Yeah.
Which I feel like was already on the late end for that. And maybe this is just because we're like old people and we don't know anymore. Maybe this is still a very robust and vibrant community that just none of us are part of.
I think it's I thought it was a weird timing choice, because you don't have to change too much to make it an 80s themed thing, right? And like it does one thing of like, I've been listening to the Replacements a lot now. One of the famous Replacements is Left of the Dial, right, which is this song about it's a love song, but it's also this kind of like love letter to the 80s era of like not being connected on social media or your internet or the phones or whatever, and just kind of driving around in a van, and like the only time that you see your girlfriend is when you hear her band come onto the radio and you're trying to find something to listen to. And I feel that sense of isolation would only help this movie. Instead of them having a cell phone and being like, we need to call the police or we need to get out of this, to have a band that's like a group of kids who are traveling in a part of the country that they're unfamiliar with, and they just kind of get forced into this situation, highlights the isolation and the fact that no one can help them. And I feel that a lot of the downside here is that the endless, like, when are the cops going to get here stuff I found distracting and things like that. Like,
That's why cops shouldn't be in these movies. I say it all the time.
And it would also, that gets rid of the other sort of weird scene where they call the cops and the cops show up. And I found that to be a distracting scene, because it's like there's too many opportunities for them to kind of get away. And I thought that hurt the tone of it.
Yeah, I think that was kind of trying to give you a plausible feeling that they might make it out, even though they were so outmatched. Yeah. And having the cops kind of show up early on and then leave is like, all right, look, we've done away with it. Yeah. For the people who always go, well, why don't they just call the cops? Like, okay, they did, and the cops came, and the cops got the guy who stabbed the other guy, and they think our job here is done.
That was a pretty gnarly scene when those two twins just...
There were many gnarly scenes in this movie.
I really enjoyed that from the point of view of the first inkling that you get that the people here are all fucking psychos.
Yes.
When they get these two twin brothers and they're like, all right, stab him. It's going to hurt. And he's like, I know, we've done it before.
I think that, like, sorry, just to kind of round out the conversation about like the time period, I think you could have done this in the 90s and it would have been perfect.
Yeah, sure.
Like, it would have been absolutely perfect. And then that way you can have them still be far from home, but it doesn't have to be all the way across the country, which might feel a little more believable.
Oh, they made it all the way to the Pacific Northwest in their van.
Yeah, and they're from Arlington.
Yeah. Like, oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't even realize. I thought they were from the Pacific Northwest.
No,
they're
they've
from
made
Washington.
It like... Yes, exactly.
Oh,
Washington, D.C.,
I heard them
not
say
Washington,
State. But then when they were where they were, I was like, oh, they just mean Washington State.
No, I think that's why they in the little interview with Tad there and his mohawk. He says, "Oh, you guys are from Washington D.C." and
maybe corrects
him.
Sam.
Yeah, maybe corrects him. But
I will say I did have to. I probably missed that because I did have to turn subtitles on after about 15 minutes because I could not hear a goddamn thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of mumbling in this movie.
Did you miss the fact that Patrick Stewart says the N-word in it?
Oh, I did not miss that one.
Because I thought he muttered that.
No, I mean he muttered it, but it was there. But yeah, you could have done it in the 90s, and then that way they could have been, even if they were from New York City and they were in upstate New York, if you don't have maps and you don't have a cell phone and you're just out in the boonies somewhere, then you're fucked.
I found it interesting because it's kind of the same setup as it's like if Texas Chainsaw Massacre was about a punk band. Mm-hmm. It's a very similar kind of setup where it's people far from home in a van.
Yep.
They go to the wrong house.
Yep.
And they get caught up in stuff that they don't understand.
It does kind of follow in a lineage of like Texas Chainsaw or even like The Last House on the Left kind of vibe.
Sure.
That like these people are just sort of out and roaming around and doing horrible shit.
I will say the difference between those other two movies and this one is that I think those other two movies zero in on what is scary about this and lean into it, whereas I agree with what Wes was alluding to. This one gets a little plotty in weird ways.
Yeah.
Where you've got that one guy whose girlfriend is the one who gets stabbed, and he's gonna leave.
He's the cousin of the guy that they had the interview with.
Yeah.
No, Worm is the lead singer of the band.
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
Other band.
Yes. So he's the one that murders the girl, but the other skinhead that comes in and is quickly convinced that he should go with them is. It's a weird movie because it gets into that plottiness, and I was thinking I could not recap what happened plot-wise in this movie, and I similarly cannot understand a lot of Darcy's motivations as to why he's trying to sometimes keep things quiet and then eventually just gives up and it's like just kill them all at this point.
I think it was all a timing based thing.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It was something where he was trying to whatever he was doing to cover up their deaths, which seems to be that he was going to bring their bodies to his property. Is it his property?
He just keeps calling it the residence,
Anyway.
which is ominous as hell.
A place where there's apparently attack dogs, and the idea was they were trespassing, and the dogs ate them all, and so it was going to be like a.
They were there trying to steal stuff, or
they were
siphon
siphoning the gas from his car,
whatever.
and the dogs got them. That's
Right.
why he said, "Don't shoot them."
That's a long way to go to solve this problem. Yeah,
yeah, it's a little, it's overthinking it maybe a little.
yeah, because I would agree that those other movies do things better. It comes down to me to buying into the premise here is that, like, I don't believe that this club exists the way that it does, right? Like, I don't believe that
specifically that it's a club on top of a meth lab,
on top of a meth lab, and it's like it's very large, and like a lot of skinheads are there, right? Like it's attracting attention. And so I was shocked in this movie that there's no point where one of the Nazis goes, "Guys, I'm an undercover FBI agent. We've been working," like, because this gathering of Nazis does not go unnoticed by the police or the FBI, I don't think, right? And they have a drug lab underneath them. Like, they know that they're there. So I found it very hard to believe that, like, the cop scene is a good example. Like, 911 gets a call, right, that gets cut off. And they go, and the cops are like, "Frank, we got a call from the Nazi drug lab place, and we should go down and check it out." But the cops who show up there, there's no conversation about how weird this, or like, we know what's going on here, or anything like that.
I feel like they probably get that call all the time, though.
Yeah, there's probably fights and bullshit happening all the time. They're like, "Oh, the fucking skinheads stabbed each other again. We gotta go pick them up. We gotta make a report." Ugh, the drive all the way out there, because I think the vibe is supposed to be that they are pretty remote. That like they're pretty far out in the middle of nowhere, and if they're in that weird section of like very northern California and then leading up to like Oregon and stuff like that, or Washington State, like there are some really remote areas out there where I think it's much more socially acceptable that you just sort of ignore what your neighbors are doing. Like, the isolation is the point. People move out there for the isolation. And so it's a much more like libertarian mindset of like, I take care of myself and my shit, and I stay out of your shit and you stay out of my shit.
Yeah.
So I would buy that people knew the skinheads go and hang out there and listen to their loud music and get drunk and fucked up. Maybe they don't know about the drug lab. Maybe they do. I don't know.
Yeah, I one of the things that I kind of liked about it, but I guess I'm on the fence about it, because I think that there's a lot of stuff going on the edges that they don't really explain or really get into, and I've been trying
like the racial awareness workshop,
right? Yeah, where like the thing that they're doing, that this band is playing for, is some sort, is like basically like a weekend rally or something that they don't get into, or that whole thing with the cousin who his girlfriend is the one who gets killed, and then like 3/4 of the way through they find out that he was gonna leave, and he's got a bat in the trunk, and the bat is like a murder weapon from a previous murder.
That was a little confusing.
That's a little bit too much hat on a hat there, I think. But
I will say, at the beginning, when the protagonist band is leaving Tad, the interviewer's house, that he says like, "Oh, I go with you guys, but I have to clean up because my cousin and his girlfriend are coming to crash here." Oh,
interesting.
So there is like a little bit of throwaway setup of sort of like, we actually, if you catch that, you as the audience know that the cousin and the cousin, A, you know the cousin has a girlfriend, and B, you know that they were intending to leave.
Yeah.
So then when you get in there and and there's a girl who's dead, it can be a little bit like, oh shit, yeah, there aren't a lot of women here.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that might be the girlfriend.
I think
I find it all a distraction. Yeah, it's like it's the if you're going for the nail biting tension stuff, all of this plot shit is irrelevant to me. It's like, it's not like, I don't. I think that's what hurts Darcy as a character.
I think what the one of the reasons it doesn't work, because what I like about it in theory is the idea that there is this stuff going on, but you only have as much information as the people stuck in the green room.
Yeah.
And so there's some but that requires you to only see it if they see it, kind of thing. And so that way, whatever they're doing can be a lot more ominous because you don't know what they're planning, and the people in the room are freaked that much more out because there's things going on that they don't understand.
I like that idea.
But here they that circle is like one step wider, where they're giving you enough. They're only giving you enough of that stuff to justify the next action that comes from it, and that's what makes it a little bit convoluted and a little bit hard to track. Because like the stuff with the cousin leaving with the girlfriend, you only find that out a minute before the cousin decides that he's going to turn on them, right, and then so there's no real larger sense of any of that plot except for right before that plot beat where he has to change sides and then ultimately get killed.
Yep.
And same with the way that they were going to kill the kids too, because you that one I actually like that one a little bit more because it only I was kind of thinking like, what the hell are they doing? Like, what's the plan? How are they going to dispose of these kids? And then ultimately it was a little bit weird, but I like that one being a little bit more ominous and a little bit more unknown. I don't know if the payoff was amazing, but
yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I just had a thought where I feel like also something that seems very normal in this crowd to go to jail or go to prison.
Sure. Yeah.
They even make comments like if you do prison time, I'll double the money I was going to give you, or
from $200 to $400.
Yeah. or like, oh, if Worm had gotten caught for this murder, the original murder of the girl, like I think Darcy makes a comment to one of his like lieutenants at one point, like if you had just let him get caught, you could have visited him in prison.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes sense because there are a lot of white supremacists in prisons, so you'd have like a network in there already.
Yeah.
It's just like, you go, you serve your time, you get out on probation or, get paroled or whatever.
Going back to the lack of tension you were talking about, Wes, I think what ends up grabbing you in this movie, or maybe not grabbing you, is not the tension as much as how brutal the violence gets, because that did really kind of shake me, not like, emotionally or anything, but like once they almost cut that dude's hand off, I was like, oh shit, this movie's not really playing around as far as what can and will happen to characters. And so the eventual fates of these characters was very surprising to me. Whether it's Justin getting choked out and then Amber just casually slicing his stomach wide open.
Yeah.
Or the one dude getting eaten by the dog, and then the other dude jumping through the window and getting stabbed to death.
Macheted to death. Not just stabbed to death, like hacked to death.
Like I thought the usage of that stuff was really effective because it was brutal and it was unexpected, and I really didn't have any sense of who was going to make it out of this, as you said, Amanda, if anybody was going to make it out of this, or what order they were going to make it out of. I did like that they kind of took the Evil Dead approach, though, where they had one character who was the more competent, male leader character, and killed him.
Yes.
And then you were stuck with the Ash of the movie, Anton Yelchin.
One arm and all.
It out. Yes.
Yeah, you're talking the jiu-jitsu guy. Once he gets taken out, he's the only one. Subtle.
Yeah. No, I think the violence and the gore in this is pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
It's really like it comes out of nowhere. There's not a ton of warning when it happens. I think even the fact that what they choose to show you versus what they don't choose to show you, and how long a shot lingers or does not linger, is really interesting too. Like when Pat, Anton Yelchin's character Pat, when he has his arm out the door with the gun and they're hacking at his arm, it's behind the door.
Right.
So you don't get all these like quick cuts of like flailing and machetes flying, but you do just get him pulling his arm back and his hand is like hanging off of his wrist.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal.
And the thing with Amber just like slitting the guy's stomach, she just does it. Like he's not a threat at the moment, and there's no like musical sting, and there's no like her walking up menacingly and people being like, wait, what are you doing? She just sort of opens the box cutter and like very casually does it, and everybody is like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But I also think it doesn't, it's not shot the same way a movie like a Hostel movie or a Saw movie is shot, where it's like really lingering on these super gory moments.
Sure.
It's kind of like you get enough to get the kind of gut impact of it, and then it just moves on.
Yeah.
It just keeps going.
Like when Maybe gets jumped by the dog.
Yeah.
Be a better
you don't
shot.
really-
Yeah, get good maybe with that shotgun.
Man, no sympathy for Maybe from you guys. Jeez.
I really liked that sequence
Yeah.
because I think it very easily could have gone the other way, where it's like now they have a gun and now they have a chance, and then it's just like, nope,
Yeah.
get one shot off, then they drop the guns and they're fucked.
Well, I like that. So Amber, who is the most terrifying thing in this movie, if you ask me, she is good at violence and willing to perpetrate violence in a way the others are not, because she is from this scene.
Right.
Like, she lives with these people and has to deal with, I'm guessing, not great treatment as a young woman in the midst of this like subculture.
She makes
out
some
there.
reference to that, doesn't she?
I think so.
Some oblique reference to being
Yeah.
abused or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
So it's interesting, and I kind of enjoy how the movie sets it up. Like, we need to put her in this group because any member of the Ain't Rights being good at violence is like a hilarious concept.
Yeah.
They are all so innocent, and like they seem like such children next to everyone from this club.
Where do we think that what was going on in that room? Why did the girl get killed? Did she get killed because she was going to leave? Because they had the thing where they had that one song written on the napkin, and that was the song that they killed her during.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
why? She and Amber went in there together. Was it some sort of drug deal gone bad or something, or do we really have any idea why she ends up getting
I
killed?
think the implication is that they did suspect that she and Daniel were going to run off,
Yeah.
and that was not allowed.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. That makes sense
Which again,
to me, but it's not something I thought about really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which again is feels like needless plotting, because it's like
Yeah.
it's
I
a
kind
drug
of-
thing. It
Or
went
I
bad.
would just believe a guy like Worm, the neo-Nazi, would maybe not treat women so good. Like,
Sure.
it wouldn't shock me if he accidentally killed a woman who maybe wasn't doing what he wanted her to do.
What was their plan of getting rid of her? Because clearly
the dead body or the emoji person.
Yeah, because they killed Worm, obviously, later.
With the bad dope.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. I think if you start asking these questions, I guess you have to depend how you want to watch this movie, right?
Yeah.
Because I think
it's
you can.
100% that. It's 100%
Yeah.
but I think that's the fact where it's not a horror movie actually hurts it, because it not being a horror movie. So I guess there's two ways to think about it. If this is an A24 movie, right, where there's something going on under the hood, I'd be forgiving of how kind of shitty I think that it's designed as a movie, because I'd say, well, at least they're playing with some kind of like interesting idea here. But they don't, in my opinion, they don't really do that. They don't ever get to a point where there's like a metaphor or something larger at play than what you're actually seeing on the screen. And so when that happens, if it's not a horror movie where there's some sort of supernatural element that I can't explain 100%, once that goes away, I'm left with just sort of nitpicking the details of like, why is this happening? Why does the door hold off the Nazis for so long? Like stuff like that. And, and the door is not a concern if there's a demonic cult out there, like things like that kind of changed the arithmetic of watching the movie. And I just thought that this one didn't stay grounded enough where I connected with it. It didn't approach the realistic nature of it well enough where I felt like it was a believable situation.
Does it need to have some sort of metaphor as opposed to just being a straightforward, people in a bad situation trying to get out of it movie?
If it does that, it has to do a better job of, like, because I forgot to mention what you guys were talking about. Like, I don't like this is not a Gorno movie, right? Like, that's my only exception to Supernatural, which makes it a horror movie, is if there's this focus on the gore of the situation.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't do that. And so when you're in a bad situation where things are going bad, generally, I think to succeed, those movies have to be plotted extremely well, because the building of tension is what makes you feel like things are really ratcheting up on you. And I think the injury to Pat's hand is an example of where I think the writing fails, which is that he gets this like catastrophic injury, right? And they just duct tape it up, and he's 95% okay for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, it's like they make one mention at the end of he has trouble cocking his shotgun, but he seems okay other than that. But in a better movie of ratcheting tension, the loss of his arm has like plot implications to it.
Yeah.
Like there's a kind of like building of tension and stuff like that. And none of the injuries that are sustained here do that. They're just kind of quick hit gore shots, and then it's over, and it has no impact on the movie for the rest of the runtime.
I was thinking about his hand injury after they taped it up. I was like, they should have taped his arm like to his chest or something.
Yeah.
Because that thing
Or
is
to the
just going to
shotgun.
be flailing.
They just tape the gun to it or something.
Yeah.
They don't.
How do you guys feel about the final sequence where they figure out how to get out by remembering a paintball analogy and then shaving their heads and
Convoluted pep talk.
That's where
hiding in a couch?
That's where I thought the theme was going to come from, because for a minute it feels like this movie is going to turn into the hunted have become the hunters, but I don't think it does really. It just kind of it settles into this weird place of this very realistic movie to this point now has them doing things that I don't understand why they're doing it anymore. Like where they go hunting the Nazis and like looking for them to try to find them. And I don't know. I didn't think that the movie sold what, like, because that's his story, isn't it? His story is about like becoming the animal or something. Can you remind me what his story is? Pat's little allegory.
His story was basically about responding to what sort
like
of
stress or something? Is that
responding to the tactical organization of the Marines they're playing paintball against with complete chaos.
Yeah.
Do you think that was effectively sold?
I don't know if it's a real 1-to-1 in this situation because I didn't think the Nazis were overly
organized. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like it's not like they were facing down a group of highly trained military guys. You know, the Nazis are just as fucking crazy as
Yeah,
as the two of them are.
By the time that it's just Pat and Amber and they're starting to like gain an upper hand, part of how they're benefiting is just that the night has worn on and enough people have left.
Yeah.
Like there's just fewer people for them to fight.
And it also this weird thing where there's a timing element involved requires everybody to leave.
Yeah, everyone has to go. Yeah.
So like after all of I do think it's
because that's part of it, right? They want everyone to go and be away and home and have like alibis and then have them die because they want the time of death to be late enough that it's believable that they weren't at the place.
Yeah, I do find it a little bit convenient that this whole thing is very meticulously planned about how they need to set this thing up and how they need to get rid of the other three. And then when it comes down to killing Pat and Amber, they're like, you have one bullet.
You have three.
So sorry, you have three bullets. You should be bringing one back. It's
the number of
maybe send like 4 guys in there instead of just making it a 1v1 situation.
The number of guns and bullets in this movie is a weird through line that always confused me every time it was brought up. Where they're like, I'll give you the gun, but I'm going to take the bullets out. It's like, do you think this is honestly the only gun in this situation?
That is
one of
the things Amber is like constantly saying in the background, where she's just like, they have guns.
I didn't,
and everyone's like, we don't trust you, and she's like, They have guns, though. They don't need this gun. They have guns.
Yeah. I mean, I was on the fence about that scene because, like, I feel like that's something that's plausible. Where you're in a, I mean, not that I've ever been in a situation. Most people haven't been in this situation, but like, if you are in a situation like that and you're trying to navigate the person on the other side of this door who you don't know, who is trying to convince you that everything is going to be fine, you just need to hand over X, and then you have like you come up with this rationale that seems like it may, because you just want to get out of there, right?
Yeah.
And so in your head it's like, okay, we'll give you the gun but we get to keep the bullets, makes some sort of irrational sense in the moment.
Yeah, there's also a level of sort of like I think it's important to sort of remember the world that the ain't rights are coming from. They're clearly like kind of college kids who are used to relying on this network of other people who are in the punk scene, and it's just sort of this naivete, I think, that I actually find really believable from them, that they would like, they're from outside Washington DC. They're clearly like college age. They've never been in a scenario anything close to this. So the fact that they would want to trust the very calm sounding adult on the other side of the door, it makes some kind of sense to me, at least at first.
Yeah. I also appreciated that there wasn't, I mean, this isn't that kind of movie, but that there was no moment where they were like, these guys might be Nazis, but we're punk rockers. And then it's like, just stomping out these Nazis and
just
something very completely unrealistic.
Just unrelenting eighth notes on the bass.
Yeah. I did like that. Generally, it's like, it's a college punk band. Yeah. There's one kid who can handle himself because he's trained in mixed martial arts, but the other ones are just skinny, weak, scared kids.
Yes. Yeah. They're not eating well. They're drinking too much and they smoke a lot of cigarettes.
Yes.
That 350-pound Nazi not being able to get out of that guy's armbar is outrageous to me, that he didn't put up a better fight.
Picked him up.
This is terrible. I just think that, like, I don't know if we have to go back to it, but it's the movie for me could have been saved with the turn that happens, I guess is my point. And I don't think it saves itself. It becomes
turn at what point?
Where the hunters become the hunters of the Nazis, and they start going after them.
Paintball pep talk.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But that's kind of what I'm talking about, though. Like, I don't know if them going after the Nazis would be realistic.
No, it's not. I don't think.
Yeah, like they try to.
But I'd be fine with it being a fantasy if it worked, like, thematically for me. If the story of his turning the tables on the military paintball guys perfectly matched what they did in the plot, I'd say, I kind of get what they're doing here, and I understand, like, why they would do it. But to that point, the movie has been trying to be extremely realistic, and so when you break through that barrier, you really have to hit the theme hard, I think. Otherwise, it just seems like, well, I don't understand why this realistic thing has all of a sudden turned topsy-turvy on me, and why they're going out of their way to go hunt the Nazis.
I kind of want to say that it sounds a little bit like we all wish this movie became the movie Mandy.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. You guys covered that, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah, I think so.
That's the Nick Cage one? Is that
Yeah. It's great. You should watch it.
I don't mind that they don't just go hunting for the nut. Like the one thing that I did find a little bit straining credulity for me was after they get out and Amber and Pat are on their way out.
Yeah.
Pat's like, "Are you sure they were all dead?" And the guy was like, "Mostly." And he's like, "Well, if you're not 100%, I should probably go back and save them." And in my head, I'm like, "Dude, just fucking go."
Yeah.
Like, that's the one where I'm like, I don't know, man. That's a pretty, like, I get it on paper,
right,
in a movie, but in that moment, if that's me, if my hand has been hacked off,
I've lost a lot of blood and I'm exhausted.
Yeah,
I almost died 17 times that night.
Do I turn back and try to fight a horde of Nazis by myself to maybe save someone who is mortally wounded, if not dead?
Yeah.
And I can't say that I would. I guess I would be a bad soldier.
I was going to say, I never want to get stuck in a neo-Nazi bar with you.
Well, as long as we're
They
in the
kill
bar.
me, you're going to fucking leave.
Well, no. I mean, if they've already taken you out, I'm sorry, you're gone. Out of sight, out of mind.
I mean,
But
I guess the problem here is, right, like, did you guys like the band? Right, like, because I think a lot of this depends on if you like these guys and you can sort of empathize with going back and helping each other or something like that.
Yeah.
I found them to be extremely unlikable, and like they're either bland to the point where I don't care what they are like, or they're unlikable because I didn't like the singer annoyed me because he's
Tiger?
yeah, the Tiger.
You didn't like Tiger?
And the jiu-jitsu guy just kind of annoyed me too. With his, he seems like he had potential, but he just irritated me. Maybe he's a nothing, and then Pat is kind of a blank slate, I think too.
I think the thing is that Pat, there's no through line for Pat where has any sort of like
Hero arc.
character work that regarding them as a group. Like when he makes that decision, there's nothing in the movie that supports him making that decision.
Yeah.
Like there's no he's never being like, we really got to stick together. We got to keep this band together.
We share
just not that-
songwriting credits and everything, guys.
Yeah. Well, but you know what I mean? Like, there's just no character beats for him that are like, this is the kind of person he is. Because he really do you think there is?
I don't know if there's exactly character beats, but I do think this movie is like I would love to read a little bit more about the writer / director.
Like Paul
and
McCartney. Paul
Okay.
McCartney would go back for the rest of the
John
Beatles.
Lennon would not.
John
No,
Lennon
he-
would not.
he'd be off, yeah.
George Harrison would have been gone before
Yeah, he
anything
wouldn't
even
have.
happened.
He wouldn't have showed up to.
But
the
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he doesn't have. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Well, there's a metaphor there for the like. It's just one of those things. Like I don't think the movie sticks to any of it. Is that like there is a metaphor for the band being a tight unit like that, right? Like that they're the band is kind of a family, and the family sticks together. But I get the sense that they don't even particularly like each other really through this. Like,
Well, they say we should split up, and they're like, yes, let's do that.
Oh yeah, let's end this tour. Let's put it out of its misery. But I think like there's a philosophical connection between the band members. So like this is what I was gonna say a minute ago is I would love to know a little bit more about the writer and director's background and if he was like intimately involved in like the punk scene when he was younger, because this really reads as a lot of like insider baseball to me. Greg,
Oh, really?
Clay just zoomed in on the
He looks exactly like Anton Yelchin's character.
face he does.
He's a very bland-looking, skinny
Yeah.
white man.
But there's this like attitude that they have where, for instance, when they first meet Tad,
the reporter.
yes, one of them
Loose
He
use
has
of the
a
term.
zine.
Yes, yes,
He still has a
he has
zine in this day and
He
age,
works
yeah.
for the
That's true,
college
yeah.
radio station. One of them calls him a fashion punk.
Oh, sure.
And when they answer the questions, they're all very like purist about like sort of like what is punk and like the punk ethos, and Pat gives a whole long answer about how like the reason they don't have a social media presence and the reason they don't have a lot of physical media is that the ephemeral nature of having to attend a live show is the point.
Yeah.
And they all seem to sort of agree with him. Like, I feel like it's subtle, but I read him as sort of the, like, philosophical center of the band.
How
where,
is
like,
his-
he's...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, just that he has these, like, really sincerely held beliefs about what punk means and, like, the like, showing up for things, and... I'm sure it involves all the like sort of like anti-consumerist, anti-capitalist stuff too.
Hey, man, he still has a cell phone.
Yeah, true. But I guess I could see somebody who, if he's genuine at all and has these really strong convictions, being like, well, I can't leave them behind.
Sure.
Oh, because
I don't know.
I really like one of my favorite moments in any punk band, especially the older ones, is that any of the punk bands that lasted long enough have the album where they recognize that what they're doing is futile, like that the movement
Yes.
failed for them.
Yes.
And I would have loved this movie if it embraced the idea that this strident punk band, which is this sort of like bullshitty punk attitude that some of the bands tend to have about like who is the most punk type thing, like what the
Yes,
ideology is. If they ran into a true ideology of white nationalism, right? Like that's kind of an interesting contrast. And then you can even have the band breaks up by the end of it because they've sort of like come to terms with the reality of what their situation is. But this doesn't do anything. Like, I one question, you can respond, I guess, to that. But the other thing is, like, I don't really understand what the point of making them Nazi skinheads is. Like, it's a shorthand for something. But I don't think that they use it at all in any kind of interesting way, aside from, apparently Yelchin's character is Jewish, and they don't want to bring that up. But it's like there's no connection to it that would make it interesting to me to watch in that way.
Yeah, it seems just to be
they're bad guys. They're shortcuts bad guys.
The bad guys of the punk world are skinheads.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was. Yeah, I agree. I think it's too bad because I think they introduce these pieces of this like very naive, like idealistic, kind of communal living sort of punk band, and then you have on the other side of the spectrum these militant white supremacists. And they share a scene. And so having something where it's like you have to come and reckon with that of like you're participating in this scene and like they were good enough for us to show up to their club and take their money.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if they had done something more with that, I think it would have maybe improved the movie a little bit.
Yeah, especially since like they have the balls to play Nazi punks fuck off.
Yeah, which was Pat's idea.
Was it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was the singer. It wasn't the singer?
No, it was Pat's idea. He says, I have a really bad idea. And then they cut to them setting up, and he's like, maybe we don't do it. And maybe is like, if you chicken out now, I'll tell them you're Jewish. Yeah. It was your idea.
Yeah, I like the idea of strident ideology running into what a truly strident ideology could be. And like the sort of learning about the weakness of your own point of view from a group that, because I think in that case you'd really have to play up the neo-Nazi aspects. Like you really have to make this be about that instead, and then it doesn't become kind of the horror movie that I guess it wants to be. Although I'm not even sure if this movie wants to be a horror movie or if the director would consider it a horror movie.
Just turns into American History X at that point.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's funny because as far as the band having this commitment to punk music in a very supposedly heartfelt way.
Not the soundtrack, unfortunately. I was looking at the soundtrack. No real commitment to any great music there. Yeah.
The Desert Island Band question, while a fun joke, kind of really undercuts that whole thing because when they're like that, the first time they're asked it, they're like, "Yeah, the Misfits, definitely the Misfits," and then he's like, "Prince, definitely Prince," which I appreciate because I think that's.
Yeah.
A very honest response where it's like, most of these people are going to say like, Donna Summer.
Yep.
But like it does, if you're looking at these characters from any point of view, like they are legitimately into the scene that they're in, then it does undercut that. But
because the whole thing about punk is like authenticity. Like authenticity is like the one foundational, like concept you have to adhere to. And so it would be, it was kind of like, it was a funny joke to have them all kind of admit that their like cool person on the radio answers were not like that kid's real Desert Island Band was not the Cro-Mags.
Right.
The Cro-Mags are they're black, right? So they're not they wouldn't be neo-Nazis, but I think they're like stridently anti-gay or something like that.
Really?
Is that the Cro-Mags? It might be the Cro-Mags.
One of them should have said like, what's your Desert Island Band? He should have said like, there's this band called Death that never put out an album, but like people said they were really good.
Yeah,
that's what my Desert Island Band like that. That's the kind of punk answer that is just full of shit. Where it's like, my Desert Island punk band is a band that never actually recorded anything.
Right, or it's all just like a didgeridoo and like a fan noise being played into a radiator.
It might not be the Cro-Mags. I don't want to besmirch the Cro-Mags if it's not them.
Slandering the Cro-Mags.
Some band is stridently anti-homosexual.
You're gonna get a cease and desist letter tomorrow.
I did want to just touch on Patrick Stewart's filmography real quick because it is very strange. Like when he's starting out, he does a lot of TV movies and stuff, and then he's in Excalibur in 1981, more TV stuff, and then he's in a bunch of. He's in Life Force in 1985, which we covered. Wes, feels like 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And then L.A. Story. That sounds familiar, but I don't know what that is. And then he's kind of the
TNG
next thing that
takes over for 10 years.
TNG takes over in 1987, which is like shortly after Life Force.
Wow, 87.
Yeah. And all of the stuff in the 90s that is not Star Trek is stuff I've either never heard of
Bit parts.
or stuff where he is playing some sort of like send up of himself.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in Robin Hood Men in Tights and he plays King John at the very end.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Shot in 2 minutes.
yeah, that role in Prince of Thieves was Sean Connery, and so like what would be like the funny version of that? Patrick Stewart, that makes sense. And then he starts doing he's got the Star Trek. Then he does Conspiracy Theory, where he plays another villain.
Yep.
I remember him
later on.
Yeah,
It's so interesting. 'Cause I always think of him very much as like a heroic figure.
Yeah, maybe he's doing that on purpose because
I think he could be a great villain. He doesn't play villains in a way that makes them memorable. There's something to an actor playing a villain where you can't just play the Jean Luc Picard character with a sneer on your face. Like you have to do something else.
He he's in Masterminds, which you brought up, which I think he's the villain in that too.
He
right?
is, and he literally has a mustache in that one to make him the villain. Yeah.
And I vaguely remember him chewing a lot more scenery in Conspiracy Theory, but I've only seen it once, I think, when it came out, and I don't remember anything else about it. But he plays Captain Ahab on TV in 98. And like I feel like that's the kind of character that would be really good for him, is someone who is
not the villain,
not
but
pure evil. Yeah, the anti-hero sort of. Or
he's an anti-hero, or if you want to call him a villain, antagonist with an ethos.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like so I think this Darcy character would work better if Darcy had
clicks his heels together 3 times and gets those kids out of there.
If Darcy had more of the skinhead ethos baked into his thing, as instead of just being sort of like the overseer of everything.
Right. He runs the drug lab. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, outside of Star Trek and X-Men, he does a voice in the Prince of Egypt. He plays Scrooge in A Christmas Carol, which that seems like that should be a slam dunk, but I actually don't think that one was very good.
I think in a better version of Stewart's film career, right? It's that sort of weird start that he had in the 80s. He gets TNG. After TNG, he kind of does what I would expect, which is that he does like sort of movies that he thinks are going to be like big bankable family stuff, or like a bigger payoff type thing where he's trying to become a star. I feel that that's correct to fail for him, and it did kind of fail. I think the mistake of his career was he went back to genre stuff with X-Men after that, when it feels like in the perfect version of his career, he takes the first weird role that no one expects at that point and like blows it up, really. And then he kind of has it pushes down the line his X-Men phase almost. Like that comes later in his perfect version of a career. I think he has like a 5 to 7 year stretch where he does like really critically lauded movies and performances before getting back into genre stuff.
Yeah, it's tough because I mean X-Men is 2000 or 2000.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, 2000.
Yeah.
And the Star Trek is done. Insurrection is 98.
Nemesis is 01, I think, right? Or something around there.
Wow. Nemesis is after the first X-Men?
I think so. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're right. 2002.
Yeah.
Man, that's strange. Yeah, I think X-Men is so weird because it's like, that seems like, based on the movies he was in the 90s, that seems like the right move to stay relevant for him.
X-Men.
Sure.
X-Men.
And everyone had been saying for 20 years before that he has to play Charles Xavier.
Yeah, he's
He's the perfect casting.
It was either him or the other bald English guy, Ben Kingsley.
Right.
Those are the only two. And Ben Kingsley was always a distant second to Stewart. But yeah, he has this weird run where he doesn't really do anything, and he kind of goes from, like, after he does Star Trek, he immediately becomes the and credit.
Yes.
Where he's like,
the ampersand
It's-
credit. It's the special
Yeah.
little ampersand instead of the.
Yeah. I wonder how much stage acting he was doing instead,
Probably a lot.
because that's
Yeah.
his roots, right?
Yeah.
Is he's
Yeah.
a Shakespearean actor, so I'm sure once he got enough film and television cred that he was a name and he could kind of go do what he wanted. I'm sure he went back to the West End.
It's
a
true.
lot
I'm sure
and
he
things
views.
like that.
Yeah, he views movies as paydays at that point.
Yes,
Yeah.
I make my money through this so that I can go do the thing that I actually love.
Yeah.
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 I do think he very smartly realized he had a good understanding of who the character of Patrick Stewart in the popular consciousness is, and undercutting that humorously, I think, has gone a really long way for him. Like,
Yes.
that scene in Extras is
Yeah.
an all-time classic. When he started doing voices on like Family Guy,
Yeah.
when he starts doing stuff like that, where it's like, oh, Patrick Stewart kind of sending up who he is,
Right, and
that-
it's like a low commitment thing for him,
Yeah.
but a big payoff in terms of like pop culture.
yeah, that buys him a lot of time,
Yeah.
and a lot of good grace from
It's
a
too
lot
late.
of people.
I've seen everything.
Yes, still the best.
Yeah, he's obviously he's been like an actor throughout my life, but I think that he's one of those weirder actors. Like I'd rather hang out with Shatner. I think, like, I don't know if Stewart fully embraces the reality of being a person, if that makes sense. Like he's a little bit of a.
And you think Shatner does?
Yeah, Shatner's really sort of off the cuff and strange in a lot of ways. Like
Okay,
he
fair,
has some
fair.
he has some really like he would be interesting to talk to in a way that I don't think Stewart is particularly interesting to talk to.
I think there's a higher bar of entry for Patrick Stewart to have a conversation with. Like, I feel like you could throw pretty much anything at Shatner and he could respond with a story.
Oh,
Whereas I
see,
think Patrick Stewart, like, you kind of have to meet him on a level.
Like, so Richard III.
well, that's what I mean. It's kind of like there's this sort of performativeness to him, and if he's not interested in the part that he wants to perform, he doesn't want to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like,
Wes, are you calling Patrick Stewart a theater kid?
he is a theater kid. It's just I tried to read his book, and it's not. He doesn't. Great on Star Trek and stuff. It's just one of those things. He just never really feels like he's developed into a full person at all, and it's
Interesting.
It's too bad.
Now, would you still choose Shatner, or what if you were going to get lunch with Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen was coming?
Ian
Those
McKellen
two
is
have
definitely
fucked, right? Those two have like had a lot of sex with each other.
Ian McKellen is definitely the person you talk to in that.
Yes.
If you're going to lunch with them, it's all attention on Ian.
But that's what I mean is like if you were gonna go in this fantasy realm where we're all friends with Patrick Stewart and he was like inviting you to lunch and then he said, "Oh, Ian will be there," I'd be like, "I will be right there."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
I would
that
go.
is,
I would go for Ian, I think. But not. If Shatner just wants to do shots on the back of an alley, I think I'll be there over anything.
That's the thing. Like, Patrick Stewart.
Shatner would want to do shots off the belly of a woman.
So I mean,
Back
the
of
thing
an
about
alley.
the thing you have to realize, Amanda, is that Shatner is like 112 years old. He's so
real old.
He's so old, and
He's
You almost just got me to do a spit take.
Stewart is like 20 years younger, and he looks much older than Shatner does.
That's wild. Yeah,
Yeah.
I always think of them as peers, which is clearly not true.
No.
That's not how time works at all.
every time I see Shatner, I'm like, I can't believe how
Yeah.
old the guy is, and he's still this
Yeah.
on the ball.
Energetic. He's got energy
Yeah,
to him.
very much so.
Didn't he go to
Yeah.
space like 2 years ago?
Yes,
He did.
Yeah.
And he hated it.
Yeah, and it
which
made him
is-
realize that space
See?
is bullshit.
That's
My
why he's
favorite
interesting.
story.
Who can come back from space and be like, "That sucked. I don't want to do."
Yeah, like if Patrick Stewart went to space, he'd be like, "Oh, the most wonderful experience of my life."
Reminded
Made
me. It reminded me of the Shakespearean prose that I read when I was young. It'd be like, "All right,
Yes,
Jesus
I
Christ."
Yeah.
I had just the sonnet to read as we crested the horizon, and Shatner's like,
and he would have read it out loud to everyone else on like the Blue
Yes.
Origin ship or whatever it was.
and
Yeah.
Shatner's like, being up there, I saw the futility of the human race, and it was awful. I don't ever want to do it ever again. Yeah, that's why Patrick Stewart, like, if you asked him what kind of wine he likes, he would talk to you for 20 minutes
about the
shit.
terroir.
Yeah, and if you asked Shatner what kind of wine he likes, he would be like, I don't care for wine.
What kind of wine he likes would be scotch.
Yes,
Yeah.
the cheap stuff. So rounding this out, How do we feel about the placement on the list? It's number 83. Should it be higher? Should it be lower? Should it be removed from our horror movie list completely?
I want to hear what Wes has to say.
I think we know where Wes stands.
Removed. It's not. If I'm on this podcast, I'm talking about not a horror movie apparently. So I think this is the most, at least like One Cut of the Dead and American Psycho. I could hear an argument for it being a horror movie. Like I could understand someone making that argument. This is a thriller. It's just a gory thriller. And so I don't think it belongs on the list. And it's also, if it was a horror movie, it's not the 83rd best. It's much lower on the list, if on the list at all.
Yeah, I think at the very least, it's
that number needs to be bumped
much lower.
Yeah. When I was describing this film to my husband, he said, "That sounds like a thriller."
Yes.
And I was like, yeah. I mean, I think you're right.
Well, I think we end up in weird territory because I think there's a lot of these movies that fall under the sort of like Hitchcock rule, where I think some of them you can like Psycho. I don't remember if we had a big argument or discussion of whether or not it belongs on the list, but it's I guess technically, if depending on how you define supernatural, there is a supernatural element in the broader term and not just like the ghost term.
I'm not even like disqualifying it on the base of not having something supernatural. I just don't think it had the level of suspense necessary.
Psycho or this? Sorry, what are we
this?
Oh, okay.
This. Yeah. I will argue with everyone that Psycho belongs on this list.
Yeah.
But for Green Room, I just don't think it rose to the level of stress and fear that it needed to. Like we recently did Don't Breathe. And I think Don't Breathe is actually kind of, I mean, there are some similarities.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of, yeah, exactly. Like it's people who are in a situation where they've rapidly gotten in over their heads and they're sort of trapped geographically with a menacing antagonist or more and a very dangerous attack dog.
And it's also strange that this movie also ended with Patrick Stewart chasing them down with a turkey baster full of jizz.
But I would argue that Don't Breathe is a much scarier movie than this one. Yeah. And so I feel like I remember myself being a little hesitant, like, well, should Don't Breathe be on this list? Probably. And if I was hesitant about that one, I have to be much more skeptical about this one.
I'm not, Amy works nights sometimes. I'm not thinking about this movie when I'm alone at night in the house. I'm not thinking, I bet there's a Nazi behind the door or something like that. Like
which of my children do I like the most and save first?
Alistair, what happened to your hair?
Put the machete down, Simon. I just
red laces in his boots.
What is that you drew in your forehead?
You fell asleep first. That was my favorite moment. Yeah, I don't.
Wes, you should start doing that to your kids.
There's nothing. I'm willing to stretch obviously my definition of horror is 1A is there's some sort of supernatural disturbing thing that's going on. Gorno is my only exception to that I think like a movie like Hostel is a horror movie, but that's really just because it like focuses exclusively on just the visceralness of watching people get hurt from it. But this, I'm just not going to think about this really. Like, and I'll think about the Gorno things, like, oh, that was terrible when they were cutting his arm off. But this is just, it's not psychologically impactful to me, and I think that's what a horror movie has to be.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think it rises to the level of tension and scariness for me. Yeah, that would supersede the other elements to put it on the list for me. So I'm also gonna take it off the list. I think.
What's the scariest moment in the movie? Would you say? Is there like a moment you could actually pinpoint?
I think the scariest moment for me is when they grab his arm, when he sticks the arm out the door.
Oh, okay.
Only pretty much entirely because I didn't know what was happening. Yes. It's just a lot of yelling and pulling, and then he pulls his arm back and his hand is hanging off.
Yeah.
I think for me the scariest moment was somewhere around the end of their set, but before they go back for the phone, when they're not going to get out of there. Like there's that moment where you're just sort of like they're leaving, like they should be done, but you know something is going to happen that keeps them there. And I was like, oh fuck, what is it going to be?
The turn. What's that Nazi's name? Like Big Justin. He's like, hey guys, I'll carry your bags for you. We're going to go out this way. Let's I called you a cab and everything. Oh, don't go in there. I told you not to go in there. Yeah.
I did like that
the neo-Nazis are super polite until they're like, and now we must kill you.
I did like that despite the response to Nazi punks fuck off.
Yeah.
They all really enjoyed the rest of the set.
A bunch of them
hard.
complimented like, yeah, you guys are hardcore.
Yeah.
Good. You guys are good. It's too bad. I liked your music.
Yeah, if they could have just focused on that, maybe they could have just got out of that sticky situation.
Yeah, to me the only moment that I thought there was actual tension was when they were playing Nazi punks fuck off.
Yeah, that was. I almost said that one too.
Yeah.
That's really the only where it's like, where's this gonna go? But then it quickly went into that guy being a valet and like escorting them out the door, and it kind of fell apart at that
and
point.
even that too. I feel like they were trying to go for this thing where it's like, oh, the Nazis who run this club are all actually very nice on the surface until you give them a reason not to be.
Big fans
and
of Voltaire. I may not agree with the things you say, but I endorse your ability to sing it.
Yeah, and even that though didn't really land the way that I would have preferred. Like where you see like that change come over them or something.
Yeah.
I also do think just as a broader statement that this movie would not have been made now the way it was made then. I think the very idea that they accepted going to the skinhead club to play music and take their money would not be accepted.
They would have to have a scene where they talk about it. Yeah, they would be like,
there would have to be a lot more context. There would have to be a lot more some other characters in the band being like, dude, I don't want to fucking play for these like Nazi pieces of shit. Like, I don't want to take their money, blah, blah, blah. And one of the others like convincing them like, no, we have to. We need the money. We have to get home.
Right.
It'd be like a much more fraught decision.
Yeah. The one other thing I want to mention is the all rights. Is that what they're called?
Ain't rights.
Ain't rights.
Yeah.
The ain't rights.
Or aren't rights, whatever.
the aren't rights.
Ain't rights.
Ain't rights. Who cares? They're a fake band.
Tiger begs to differ.
The people who performed the music on the soundtrack, one of them is an artist named Joel Grind, who actually wrote and performed the music for the 7-inch albums that came with the comic book I did, Poser, a handful of years ago.
That's awesome.
Which is pretty cool. I guess he's a pretty well-known guy in those circles and stuff.
Well, look at you.
I know. Look at that. 6 degrees of me over
He
here.
just pulled out a top hat and a little monocle.
Where'd this ascot come from?
I wish this movie had a better soundtrack. Not that there's anything, but it's really, you're kind of expecting like not just the cover of Nazi Punks Fuck Off to be like the song that is represented in a movie like this, but it is.
Like when William Friedkin's Cruising has a better punk soundtrack than this movie, I think you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Like as much as, don't get me wrong, I love Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Yeah.
The closing credits song being a CCR song to this punk movie feels a little weird to me.
Doesn't it also feel like a missed opportunity to go to some like smaller punk bands and be like, hey,
yeah,
do you want to put your song on the soundtrack?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Like,
yeah,
you know, I feel like that could have been a really cool gesture of being like, we're gonna go to these lesser known bands and we're gonna pay you money and put your song on the soundtrack because you're a cool band and this is gonna give you at least some sort of broader audience.
That's what Friedkin did with Cruising. The soundtrack to Cruising is so good.
I'll have to check it out.
It is really good. And it's
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's just a really funny situation because when Friedkin was doing all the research in these gay clubs in New York, they were all playing like top 40 disco stuff, and he was just like, I hate that music, and I just wanted to not play that music under any circumstances. So I went out and I got the soundtrack of like the best young punk bands I could find.
Awesome.
Anyway, I think that's going to do it for Green Room. We have reached our next wild card, which is Amanda's pick. Amanda, what have you got for us?
Well, Clay, I feel like we haven't done a good old fashioned haunted house
Okay.
in a while.
I'd like to hear it.
I don't know if you're going to like this choice.
I think I know where you're going, and I don't think I'm going to like this choice.
I would like to do the 1979 Amityville Horror.
Oh, I'm fine with that.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
sure. Let's do
All
it.
right.
I thought you were going to say I'm the pretty thing who lives in the house,
Oh.
which is one of my least favorite
I
movies I've
forgot
ever
that
watched.
I spent like the first season of this show taunting you that I was going to pick that one eventually.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me that it exists. I will keep that in my back pocket.
Great.
But no, I would like to do the Amityville Horror.
I thought it was Cider
Because-
House Rules, but it goes with the non-horror thing here, but apparently not.
No, I have a soft spot for that, like, story and that whole thing. And the last podcast on the left is currently or has just finished doing an Ed and Lorraine Warren series, so it's been top of mind for me. I thought it would be fun to do.
Sure. The first time I watched that, it was very distracting for me because I couldn't get over how much James Brolin looked like Christian Bale. So hopefully,
And it's got our girl.
Margot Kidder.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. I almost said Margot Robbie, and I knew it was wrong.
I'd watch it then too.
Yep.
Yeah, that's going to do it for us. If you want to help support the show, head over to patreon.com/the Pensky File, where you can check out all of the myriad of podcasts we have over there. We've got all sorts of Star Trek stuff. We've got movies.
Life
Amanda
Force.
and I are working.
A lot of
Life
Patrick
Force,
Stewart
yes, you
movies,
can.
yeah.
Patrick Stewart.
Yes, Christmas Eve. No, was Christmas Eve. Was that a Patreon or was that a? How the hell
That's
did we end up doing that?
That's a real ripe, real rotten choice.
Was that just?
Just on the feed for real ripe? Yeah.
But who was that? Was it Patrick Stewart we were doing?
Yeah, because we started off with Star Trek, so it's that. And what was his best one? The hell did we cover for his best movie?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Hold on.
I don't know. Anyway, while he's looking that up, Amanda and I are covering the Halloween series, getting deeper and deeper into the worst.
Shit's getting weird.
The worst Halloween movies. And I have a comic book out right now called Hardstyle Juice, which is a digital comic out from Comixology. If you go to hardstylejuice.com, you can find the first. When this comes out, it'll be 3 issues will be out. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can download it and read it for free. Be much obliged if you could check that out. Take a second to review it and give us a rating or something. That would be cool as well. Did you find it?
Logan,
Oh, that makes sense.
93%.
We have covered so much stuff I have no memory
Yep.
of.
Yep. We did the Tom Cruise movies. I was just looking at this. We did Ridley Scott's A Good Year.
Oh boy,
that movie was bad.
The only thing that I do remember very clearly is that when we stopped doing Real Ripe, Real Rotten, we were just about to do Schwarzenegger.
Yep.
Or Stallone. I can't remember which one.
Schwarzenegger.
We were gonna watch Demolition Man. We never ended up doing that. And we were going to do Schwarzenegger, and I was really excited to revisit End of Days.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll get back
Maybe
to it
that would be a
someday.
Patreon
I'm
thing.
sensing some crossover potential with End of Days.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd put it on the list, but it still has the best trailer moment of all time where it has the year 1999 and the 3 9s turn upside down to make 3 6s.
Nice.
Excellent stuff.
Nice.
Anyway, Wes, thank you for joining us.
Sure. Thanks for having me to talk about another non-horror movie with Patrick Stewart in this one.
One of these days we'll invite you for an actual horror.
Last time you got Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3.
Well, I had One Cut for the Dead was the last.
Oh, that's
I think
true.
the last time. Yeah, but I think we reposted my opinions on that one. Or I guess we did. What was it? We did the third one. That's true. That's a horror movie.
Yeah.
Still not very scary.
It is a low batting average though for it.
Yeah.
For the show.
No, it's
We'll bring you in for a good one.
horror movies are too scary, so I'm happy to do the non-horror movies.
Thank you, Amanda,
Thanks, Clay.
and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, everyone.